Right. Hello and welcome to AWS Made Easy, your weekly live stream where we go over the latest AWS articles, answer your questions, and interview people in the AWS community. Rahul, how have you been?
Excellent. I am back from a week-long vacation, and as you can see, feel pretty refreshed.
You look
But
very
yeah, we're super excited to be back before another week of traveling.
Yeah, we've got the AWS New York Summit coming up. That is the last stop on our non-stop savings tour. And what have you thought
Absolutely.
about these regional summits so far? We've been to Toronto and London. So, and then now New York, kind of wrap up our travel for the summer.
Yeah, I mean, they've been super exciting, to be honest. Just seeing the entire community come together, in one place, meeting people in person, hearing their perspectives about where they are in their entire cloud journey has actually been very, very exciting. So I've thoroughly enjoyed every conversation we've had over the last month and a half now, and I'm looking forward to New York. So if you're around in New York, please come by to the AWS Summit there, and we'd
Absolutely.
love to talk to you.
I am putting a link in the booth. Let me share the screen real quick. Share screen. There it is. This is the Nonstop Savings Tour page on CloudFix. I put the link in the comments. You can go visit, have a look. Yeah, please book in a demo or just come say hello. And we've also got a
Right.
really neat reception on the 101st floor. So I'm looking forward to that.
I definitely am. This should be a lot of fun. We do have some of the best events around, so please do come by. We'd love to talk to you. And also, yeah, how was your weekend, Stephen?
Yeah, I feel like I was just spending time with friends and family, or mostly family, and it was really refreshing. It was kind of perfect, how it should be. But I'm very excited to jump back into the week, and also looking at our upcoming live streams. I want to share.
Yeah, I
Um,
wanted to bring that up. We have some very, very exciting guests over the next 3 weeks now.
yes, we have. Let's put this on the screen. Present. Oh, let me share a different screen. Do you use Chrome profiles? I do, and I find that the yellow profile that I use for sharing is not logged into LinkedIn, so I had to switch. So let's
No
see.
problem.
On terms of posts, let's see. So this is our live stream. We've got Keith Hodo. Um,
That's
he's
right.
coming up on August 8th. We've got Steph Gooch coming up right
Next
here
week.
next
So why
week.
don't we do it in chronological order? So next week
There we go.
we have the one and only Stephanie
Steph Gooch.
Gooch, who is the senior optimization architect with the optics team, and she's going to talk a lot about AWS cost optimization. And I am really, really looking forward to that conversation. We met up with her in San Diego at FinOpsX, and we are going to be live with her next week on Tuesday. So really looking forward to this conversation. Then the following week we have Keith, correct?
No. The following
Sorry,
week we have Yuri Prodoko.
that's right. Correct. So we have Yuri. Again, we got a chance to spend a lot of time with Yuri at FinOpsX in San Diego. Yuri is the creator of the Kudos dashboard. If you've not heard of that, please check out our the other live stream that we did with Meredith Holborn, where we talked about the Kudos dashboards and demoed it. Yuri is the co-creator of the Kudos dashboard, and they've just had some very interesting release announcements recently. So we're going to be talking about that and other stuff that he's working on. So really excited about that one as well.
And I guess this is an example. I mean, how this live stream came to be. I first met Yuri via Meredith via a live. No, actually, Yuri gave a comment on a LinkedIn post of a CloudFix blog post saying, "Hey, there's another way to do this using the cur," and he gave me some great feedback. And then we got to meet live in FinOps X, and we also
Right.
got he also watched Meredith's stream and commented on that. We got to meet live at FinOps X, got to talking. Hey, we should do a stream together, and we have some other good exciting discussions with him. So looking forward to the output of that. All right. And then the next coming up.
So that's August 1st. And then we have August 8th,
Sorry,
where
it doesn't show
we
on.
have so many lined up now.
Let me just find episode number.
Was it right on top?
There it is. Now, next we have Keith. Keith Hodo. He is a partner solutions architect. That's going to be a pre-recorded episode. He's actually on his way over as we speak. That's going to be a really interesting. Keith, I had a chance to meet with him. I actually met him over LinkedIn as well. I was waiting in the lobby of a building at AWS, and he said, "Hey, grab a coffee." And we got to talking. I said, "Wow, we really have the same. I really want to hear your views on how you work with large enterprise partners." And we got to talking, and episode 61 is now on the docket.
Correct. Now, these are all the amazing conversations that we love to have with our audience and the folks at AWS. So really looking forward to the next 3 weeks and the conversations there.
And then episode 62, that is just us. We will be reviewing kind of post-processing New York, post-processing all the other. We'll have a few more AWS announcements by then, because that's the fire hose that keeps on giving. So we'll have a few more episodes to review by then. And then last one on the docket, August 22nd, we've got Darko Mazaros. That was a pleasure to talk to him, and that's going to be a really fun episode as well.
That's true.
So we've got a busy couple of weeks ahead, lots of really engaging guests and content. And so please write in your questions, and we'd love to address those.
Absolutely. And I think this is the first time that we've gotten so far ahead in terms of planning all of our live streams. So hopefully you'll make, you the audience, are going to make use of this heads up on the specific episodes that are coming up. And we'll try and keep up with giving you enough, enough time to kind of digest the content of these conversations up front, or what could potentially be content for the conversations, and enable you to reach out to us.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to try and keep that pipeline at least a month full from this point on. And it's really exciting. I think it's been really fun just reflecting on the growth of the stream and the guests that we've had, the sheer amount of hours, the number of reviews we've done. So
Correct.
With that, we should jump into the reviews for this week. Do you have any other announcements?
Let's see, New York and all these episodes. I think that is it. Let's get right into the announcements.
Okay, let's put the other window back on. We have got an announcement from Textract. Now, Textract is a really, really cool service. It's a managed machine learning service with a very particular purpose, which is extracting text from either images or PDFs. Now,
correct.
I'm thinking back to when I was a young undergrad, and I was trying to do my senior year thesis, and one of my professors said, one way to do something interesting is to find some new data. And so I went to the archives of the library, found this interesting data set that was in this book. The only problem is the only place I could find it was a book. And so I had to, and I tried at the time, take some photos of it. And at the time there were some really weird, Java-based programs that were really heavy, really hard to get running, and had terrible accuracy for OCR at the time. And plus, these were old textbooks with strangely formatted tables. So I ended up just typing the whole thing into Excel and going from there. Textract is so nice to be able to just put in a PDF, put in an image, and get text back. So with Correct. This announcement, what is the main part of this announcement?
So the AnalyzeDocument API basically got a bunch of new enhancements and features which basically help analyze more accurately. And the nice thing about Textract, so the reason why I pulled this one up is Textract has been around for a while, and the service has been around. But with all the talk of AI these days, I think some of the more fundamental special purpose AI tools that AWS has built, those have kind of gotten lost in that conversation. we don't go back to some of these tools that have been around for a while and have been refined and fine-tuned to a very large extent over the many years that the teams have been working on it. And we don't talk about these very much, but they have very, very special purpose. They do a great job of detecting forms. So if you're an organization that processes a lot of paper forms, or you're an organization that has tons of PDFs with forms and tables and other kind of content, Textract is an amazing service that helps you analyze all the content, and it gives you all the data in a simple JSON format that you can then take into any program, evaluate it, go figure out what you need to do. And yeah, it just makes life really simple with these kind of documents. And these were all, in the old days, you used to have data entry specialists whose only job was to look at these forms and enter the data, and more often than not, that data would be inaccurate because somewhere somebody, misread something and ended up showing up differently. All of those problems have been reduced to a very large extent with Amazon Textract. So if you haven't seen this already, please go check it out.
It's really interesting. I was reminded of, I saw this article. I'm not sure if it's an academic urban legend or not, but apparently, the whole idea of spinach being this incredible superfood was based on a misprint from a paper in the 30s where they got the amount of iron wrong in it by an order of magnitude. And so, like you said, just moving that decimal place one place into that manual transcription. I'm sure when I was importing my own research data set, I'm sure I messed up something. It wasn't a particularly landmark project, and I don't think anyone really peer reviewed it with any kind of depth. But I'm sure that would have been an issue. And so it's really nice to have a pipeline that you can use that's very special purpose. And thinking about Chat GPT plugins, right? So Chat GPT is, like you said, subsuming, and other LLMs are expanding in their scope. But what's really nice is that when you are at a very particular task, you can use a more particular tool.
Correct.
And to look at something like ingesting a document and understanding the structure, that is great for that is the whole point of Textract.
Exactly. Now, I mean, it's a really amazing service whenever you're dealing with documents and stuff like that. Just a few examples of places where I personally use Textract. So, for example, just organizing all of my bank and insurance and those kind of documents, collecting all the information from monthly statements and stuff, and just automating the action and processing of all of it. I found it to be such an easy task. You have a simple, S3 bucket where you dump these documents. That S3 bucket, raises an event, which triggers a step function. The step function analyzes the document with Textract. The JSON goes to a Lambda. The Lambda decides what has to be done, or it stores all the transactions or whatever else I need in a database. And that's it. It's a simple way of assimilating and processing all of the, tons of documents that we have around us, but don't have the time to either look into them or analyze them.
Also, well, so how do we rate this one?
Yeah, I wish there were a little more of the specifics for what has been improved and how. Textract is a super simple service. It just got the simple API of AnalyzeDocument, gives you back the JSON. So really simple and straightforward. But I would wish that they had specified a little bit more about the kinds of, accuracies that they've bettered in this version. So I would give this a 3. I'm glad that they put out at least something, because it came back into the mainstream and not forgotten amongst the hundreds of AWS services. But I love Textract as a service. So if you haven't used it already, please, you should try it.
All right. And then how are we going to rate this one?
This would be, let's see, this is simplified.
I think it's a simplified. Sure. Yeah.
Definitely a simplified.
I mean, it's a new feature. It doesn't make anything more complicated. That would be hard to argue. And I like this idea for things like standardized layouts, right? So it's nice that as the training gets more and more refined, you can say, okay, here are IRS tax records or medical records from a certain company, all those things. All right, well, let's switch gears to pgvector. And I know this is odd. I need to run for 1 minute. Someone's knocking at the door, and no one's here. It's actually I'll be right back. But yeah, I've put this one up on the screen. If you want to start, I'll be right back.
Perfect. So this is an announcement about Aurora PostgreSQL. And PostgreSQL now supports pgvector for vector storage and similarity search. Now, of course, the talk of the town today is all about AI. And the thing with AI is that when you're using LLMs and models like that, when you need to fine tune these models, you can't just give it a bunch of text and expect things to magically get better. So what we basically do is we end up taking documents, creating insights from them, and vectorizing them and storing them in a vector data store. Now, there are a number of different vector data stores that are available out there. But the amazing thing about Aurora Postgres is it's something that everyone is familiar with. Everyone who's already been using Postgres as a relational data store knows how to use it, understands the mechanics of it. So instead of learning a completely different paradigm, which is vector data stores, you can now just continue to use something like Aurora Postgres and start saving all of this vector data in the same place, and use that for fine-tuning and refining the way you work with these LLMs. Now, there's another aspect of this, which is, I think we've talked about this a number of different times. The advantage of moving to a cloud-based service like Aurora is that you get all of these benefits that keep getting added to the base service for free. And these just come in at a steady pace. This is not something that you could possibly do if you were managing all of this yourself. You just wouldn't do this.
Now, if you were evaluating another vector database, like, I don't know, there's Milvus and there's Pinecone, they all have their advantages. But like I said, if all of a sudden you see this announcement, you think, okay, this makes things a lot simpler. I don't have to stand up new infrastructure. I don't need to deal with another software vendor, maybe evaluate the license. Is the open source going to affect anything or not? It's ready to go.
Exactly. So just the familiarity of an existing database, it's a well-proven data store, Postgres, all the backups, all the mechanisms of replication are already in place. It just adds an amazing new feature for vector data storage. And now you can start leveraging it right out of the box.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, this is an obvious simplifies.
I think this is definitely a simplifies.
I mean, like you said, not having to evaluate a new vendor, not having to, with all of the other things that you have to do when you adopt a new product, right? Figure out the backup strategy, figuring out the licensing, dealing with perhaps a new vendor and a new procurement cycle. All of that stuff you don't have to deal with.
I couldn't agree more. My only concern, and I have to think about this a little bit, which is AWS's strategy over the last decade has been use the right data store for the right kind of data. So, for example, if you have time series data, you use Timescale. If you have graph data, you use Neptune. If you have non-relational data or something like JSON data or document data, you put that in either DocumentDB or DynamoDB, or basically for a NoSQL store. For relational databases, you have the likes of Aurora. So while they've been building some very specialized data stores for specialized kinds of data, this one is kind of going down the Microsoft route where they were like, let's build one database to rule them all. And Postgres has kind of been trying to do that with blob storage, trying to build parity with Oracle and SQL Server, or sorry, actually not SQL Server, but more like Cognos. I don't know, in some sense, the long-term strategy seems a little muddled, but it'd be interesting to get AWS's perspective on why they decided to mix two paradigms in one database.
And there's certainly times where it doesn't feel like it's a good fit. So things like, I guess this my early usage of Amplify, when you wrote this model and it sort of dumped it into a Dynamo table, and
Right.
that whole process was a bit more. It was a bit more opaque at that time. I know what you mean. You want to make sure that they're not just trying to fit a square peg in a round hole.
Yes.
Otherwise, yes. But that being said, I think Postgres is one of those foundational things, like Dynamo, like EventBridge, where you could build a lot on top of it.
Yeah, possibly. Again, I think we'd love to get somebody from the RDS team to talk about this subject in the near future.
Well, how should we give this one in terms of rating?
Okay, so definitely a simplifies that we already said, and then I would give this it's actually relatively straightforward. So I'd give this a 4-star.
All right, cool. Well, let's go take a 30-second break, and then we come back. We have an article on Lambda looping. We'll be right back.
Some tools just find AWS cost savings and make you do all the work. Visualizing cost opportunities is great, but that's not enough. CloudFix, on the other hand, actually delivers those savings for you. And you don't need to worry, because CloudFix is AWS recommended and easy to use. It's the only tool that fixes cost-saving opportunities, and not just finds. It's the easiest way to save money on AWS. It's all 100% automatic and risk-free. And the best part of all, it works non-stop. Stop overspending on AWS and click on the button to start saving now.
Awesome. Well, let's go to Lambda loop detection. So AWS can now detect and stop recursive loops in Lambda functions. Now, is there ever a time where you want a recursive loop in a Lambda function, or is that an anti-pattern?
It's an anti-pattern. Lambda is supposed to be a single function call. Like, you don't want to bring in your functional programming paradigm into Lambdas. That's not what it is designed to do. Invariably, it is something that just causes a whole lot of issues. A classic example is like you've got a Lambda that's reading from an SQS queue and processing the requests as they come in. Now, let's say there's an error and you decided that your logic is such that you just put that message back in the queue in the hopes that you will get to it after some time and the error might go away. But in a bunch of these cases, you might actually end up in a situation where you're just getting the same message over and over again, and you're running in this infinite loop, not just within the Lambda function, but even across those messages coming in. So there are a bunch of these scenarios where, and by the way, that's a wrong way of implementing a Lambda function to process an SQS queue. You shouldn't actually be taking it out of the queue till you actually processed it, or you've got a success, so that it stays in invisible mode, and then when the visibility timeout hits, it comes back into the queue. So there are wrong ways of implementing, like especially when you come in from enterprise service bus frame of mind, and you're trying to implement some of these things, you can end up making certain mistakes, logical mistakes in the way you use Lambdas, which causes you to loop recursively.
And well, Lambda's fast, so it's going to go quickly, and you're going to rack up a bill very quickly if you do have a recursive Lambda.
Exactly.
I may have done that with some mistimed SQS timeouts before. It's like, why is this? There's no bug in the Lambda function, but it keeps launching again and again.
Correct. Yeah. So there are a bunch of these scenarios where now, if you have 16 recursive calls to the Lambda with the same inputs, it basically stops.
That sounds really good. And so I imagine it's just tracing a unique ID through the
Correct.
through the entire process. I'm amazed that it's turned on by default.
That is the best part of it.
Yep.
Because I think there's just so many cases out there where people make these mistakes and land up or rack up these huge bills. And the fact that this is now free and comes with the service by default, I think that's a huge, huge benefit to the entire, AWS customer base.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is going to prevent a lot of cost overruns, and especially even if you know that it was your fault, it still just feels bad when that happens. So
yeah,
that will prevent people from making that kind of mistake. So that's good. Anything that can limit the blast radius while not stopping people from doing this if they really, really want to.
Yep.
I find it interesting that you can't even turn it on through a menu. You have to contact support.
Correct.
So they really don't want you to do recursive lambdas.
Exactly. And I think this is exactly the right behavior. So for the first time ever, I think I'm going to give this a 5. And I'm giving it a 5. I don't know if you have a 5, but we're going to give it a 5 for the following reasons. A, the customer has to do absolutely nothing. This is only for your information. 2, it improves efficiency, both from a cost standpoint and operational efficiency for the customers without the customer having to worry about it or do anything at all, right? This is an enhancement that's so welcome, and it's kind of just baked in by default and gets turned on by default. So, and the fact that this is one of those rare features that spans more than one service. This actually detects recursion between SQS, SNS, and the Lambdas between them. So that's a higher order function that has been made default. And as far as I can recollect, I think this might be the very first time that something like this has been put out. So I am very, very excited about it. I'm very excited about more such features coming out that just bring benefit without the customer having to do anything at all.
This is really, and I'm just going through the blog post. This is really neat. They really thoroughly explain not just what it does, but also how it works, what to do about it.
Yep.
It's really, really neat. And I like how it says you may have valid use cases where Lambda recursion is intentional, but you use caution.
That is an anti-pattern. I would say that is a Lambda anti-pattern. You should not have to design it that way. Like, I would love to know of a use case where that is good design pattern for Lambda.
I think it probably never is, but maybe there's some code that people just don't want to touch that happens to work that way because someone got it to work. And I think that's probably the use case. I don't think it's new code that's being written this way. Well,
yeah.
Let's give that one the simplifies.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, we're going to take another 30-second break, and then when we come back, we are going to be talking about Systems Manager. All right.
Some tools just find AWS cost savings and make you do all the work. Visualizing cost opportunities is great, but that's not enough. CloudFix, on the other hand, actually delivers those savings for you. And you don't need to worry because CloudFix fixers are AWS recommended and easy to use. It's the only tool that fixes cost savings opportunities and doesn't just find them. It's the easiest way to save money on AWS. It's all 100% automatic and risk-free. And the best part is that it works non-stop. See for yourself. Click on the button to get a free demonstration of CloudFix and stop overspending on AWS today.
All right, we've got our Systems Manager foundational blog post. Now, there's a bit of almost a misnomer. I would say it's more of an overview because Systems Manager is enormous. So I'm putting the link here. I want to show you the Systems Manager Operations Hub. The Systems Manager contains a lot: operations management, application management, change management, node management, and within node management, there's quite a few different functionalities. So how would you summarize Systems Manager, Rahul?
I think it's the service to help manage AWS services effectively. That's how I think of it. It's like the, it's the meta service catalog that helps you operate all of your resources in as efficient a way as possible. And this includes things like, how do you ensure that all of your resources, like especially the EC2 instances, are properly cached, are properly accessible via the different agents? Have you got all the agents set up? Have you got all the mechanics to turn on and turn off centrally, certain rules and, mechanisms by which you allow certain instances to operate a certain way? All of those things are managed under Systems Manager. Patch management is another very common requirement of managing all of these resources. All of that comes in with Systems Manager.
So I put that in the blog post. Just within the node management, which is what we're focusing on, there's distributor, where you can get files out to there. There's run command, we can run the same command on a bunch of nodes at the same time. State manager, which is to make sure that a certain software, you want to make sure that software is installed. So check if it's installed and install it if it's not. Then there's change manager, which we use in CloudFix to power how to make changes to instances at scale. There's patch manager. The naming does get a bit verbose. I have to highlight our friend Corey here. Ask the systems manager, marketing manager.
I think that the number of usages of manager is crazy.
But that being said, it does a lot. To check out the documentation for details, what this blog post goes over is making sure that the Systems Manager agents are installed properly. Because Systems Manager requires an agent to run. Similar to the CloudWatch agent, which Systems Manager needs this agent, and that's how we can have fine-grained control over these nodes. Because normally, just via the EC2 API, you could shut down an instance, you could restart it, but you couldn't install software, and you don't have a window inside of it. And that's what Systems Manager provides. It's really a window inside to the software. And it works for Mac, Windows, and Linux instances, which is pretty neat. It's not just not just that. So there's some terminology. Systems Manager, we call it manage nodes. Now, you can also manage non-EC2 nodes with Systems Manager. Is that correct?
I haven't actually tried that use case. As you know, we've been all in on AWS, but I haven't tried managing a non-AWS resource with Systems Manager. But I believe that you can. I know the bare metal instances and a bunch of other such machines can be managed, but I haven't tried managing a non-AWS resource there.
So if you were in a hybrid situation and you were planning a rollout, you could use Systems Manager on the nodes both locally and in EC2, and they can all treat them with a similar interface, a managed node. There's a thing called an SSM document, and that's what the Systems Manager is executing. And so you can have a document that's like patch Nginx server. Now, one way you could do that is to simply change your AMI and then slowly cycle out your nodes. But you could also, if for whatever reason you had a more stateful approach, you could do it via Systems Manager.
We also use the SSM documents with Systems Manager Change Manager, which is another service. And we use the SSM documents as a template to describe what changes you want implemented. And these changes under Change Manager are audited and they're cataloged, and then you know exactly who made the change, what is the authorization and approval that went through that change getting executed. So you have these SSM documents that can get executed by Change Manager in whatever environment you have. And that's the AWS recommended way of making changes to your environments instead of just randomly SSHing into a EC2 instance or any other machine and then deciding to make changes over there. Because once you made those changes, there's no record of it. It's really hard to trace if something were to go wrong, why it went wrong.
I saw this incredible hack once where people were doing SSH multicasting. We'd SSH into one server and it would echo the commands to 10 different servers. And so in theory, if all of them were exactly the same and all of the commands took exactly the same amount of time to run on each, it could kind of work, but it could also, like you said, lead to this unauditable mess.
Correct. Especially if you're changing software and you're upgrading stuff and you've done it via SSH operations, then you've lost track of what's happened inside the machine. Externally, all your tags, everything might be intact. But if you've gone and fundamentally changed a bunch of stuff with SSH inside, there's no record of it. There's no log of it. There's no trace of it. And that could come to bite you in the long run.
Now, to make sure, the neat thing with Systems Manager, many AMIs that you're probably using, so like Amazon Linux after 2017.9 or Amazon Linux 2, Amazon Linux 2023, they have it pre-installed and it's ready to go. And even some community-supported AMIs also include the Systems Manager agent. So it's not a big hurdle in that sense. But what the rest of this blog post goes through is to actually can you find instances where you don't have Systems Manager running using the cost and usage report, and then you can use the SSM describe instance information API to see if it's installed or if it's installed and not running, and then use EC2 Instance Connect to install the SSM agent. So the rest of this blog post kind of goes over how to find it, how to validate to see if the agent's running, and then once it's running, this is the Lambda function, which uses EC2 Instance Connect, which is like a short-term SSH access into the box. That's really cool too. Yeah. And a quick SSH session that has the duration of a Lambda function.
In fact, to connect, you should ideally use SSM Connect and not use, because all your tokens, permissions, all of that are temporary. And you should use SSM Connect instead of actually doing an SSH into the machine.
Well, if it didn't have the SSM agent.
Yeah, if it didn't have the SSM agent, you would need to do this.
Yeah. But it's neat that you could.
Correct.
And so this is kind of how you could do it. So you have a quick 3-command SSH session, and then it closes the instance. This is also how to do it on Windows, and you can actually use SSM to update itself using Systems Manager. So that's kind of cool.
True.
And there is an SSM document called AWS Update SSM Agent, which will update itself. So speaking about this meta management, you can use Systems Manager to manage the updating of Systems Manager.
Yep.
So scrolling through this is kind of how to make sure your SSM agent is there. And so hopefully you can... the other one that's a companion to this is to make sure that it's in a VPC that has DNS enabled and has the required VPC endpoints. So using this, you can make sure that your Systems Manager can reach back out to have that connection, because it needs to listen and it needs to send data back. So
correct.
You need to make sure your network is set up for that. But it's the same as with CloudWatch. You need to make sure it needs DNS and it needs a certain VPC endpoint for this to work.
Yeah, and a large part of why we created this this blog post or this entire foundational series is because unless you have SSM, CloudWatch, SSM and CloudWatch configured the right, and your network, of course, your VPCs configured the right way, you don't get the ability to either analyze your cost effectively, and more importantly, you actually have no mechanism of implementing any changes or fixes that you might want to do. So a large part of the automation relies on making sure that these three pillars of, how resources are managed in AWS and how they generate these metrics are all turned on and turned on effectively for all of your resources, so that you can actually manage them and execute them effectively, efficiently.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you brought it back into CloudWatch. I wrote up here, if CloudWatch is like your nervous system, then Systems Manager is your brain, right? It takes the input and it decides, how am I reacting? How am I responding? And so you can take your input could be, this instance is down, or this instance is not in the desired state, and your output is how to fix it. Again, this is only one pillar of Systems Manager. There's so much more. There's Change Manager, Event Manager, Instance and Problem Manager, and then Node Manager. And so these 5 are just within the node management pillar. There's a lot more there. All right. Well, this is been a really good show. I think, go ahead and read this blog post, and hopefully we'll see you up in New York next week.
Absolutely. And please leave us some feedback about what you think about this content. We want to make sure that what we're putting out is relevant to you, that you can make use of all of this. And we want to make sure that we are catering to your needs and answering your questions as well. Also, if there are specific people that you want from AWS coming on the show and discussing, content that's relevant to you, please do let us know. We would love to have them, and AWS has been incredibly gracious in, letting a whole bunch of folks come to our show and participate in this audience conversation. So please do let us know who you'd like to speak to or what content you would like us to discuss. We would be more than delighted to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's our pleasure. We're here for you. So please, tell us what you want. And we're looking forward next week to be joined by Steph Gooch. So that will be a really good show.
Absolutely.
All right.
Looking forward to it. Thanks, everyone. And hopefully see you all in New York next week.
That was good. See you, Rahul. See you, everyone.
Bye.